If you are not yet a member of the Patreon, link is in the description. Please consider becoming a member, as you will have access to many videos you cannot find here on YouTube. On June 19, 2020, during the midst of the George Floyd protest, a crowd of rioters and protesters came together to topple the statue of a highly revered Freemason by the name of Albert Pike because of his racist beliefs in the past. Just a week later, President Donald Trump specifically requested that this statue, of all statues under attack that year, be reinstalled and resurrected. Now, 5 years later, that's exactly what happened. On March 31st, 2025, President Trump signed Executive Order 14253 titled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. This order directed the Department of the Interior and related agencies to reinstate monuments and statues that had been removed or altered since January 1st, 2020, if their removal was deemed based on ideological shifts. On August 4, 2025, the National Park Service announced that it would restore and reinstall the bronze statue of Confederate General Albert Pike in Judiciary Square, Washington, D.C., and targets October 2025 for the statue's reinstallation. In today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about who Albert Pike was, his relationship to Donald Trump, and while we're talking about a person that most of you may have never heard of, why we would be talking about a person like this on this channel and how it could potentially impact your life, believe it or not. Before we get into the story though, I just ask if you're new to the show, please know we're thirsty to grow. And to drink some of this water, you can help us out by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Make sure the notification bell is hit as well. Alright, thank you. Let's get into it. Before we speak about Albert Pike, it's first important to clarify and explain what Freemasonry is, because there are many people who either don't know, don't care, or who have been misled to believe falsehoods about the organization. And if you did know the truth already, maybe you would not only care after this video, but you will be furious to learn that the Freemasons run our world, and I will prove that in this video. For the past 3 years, I've made countless videos covering the Masonic symbolism in music videos, movies, TV shows, artists, and celebrities who are alleged and sometimes self-admitted Freemasons, all the past presidents that were Freemasons, including the founding fathers, their role in the quote-unquote moon landing, so on and so forth. That's the reason America is called the land of the free, because it's taken from the Freemasonic Creole, land of the Freemasons, or land of the free and accepted Masons. For example, on the back of the dollar bill, it states New Order of the Ages, while also showing the one-eye symbolism, which is the main Freemason symbol, which represents the quote-unquote light, which we will talk about later in the video. While I've covered this in the past, I haven't actually dedicated an entire video to Freemasonry, surprisingly, their beliefs, and the society's most revered founders and or historical leaders. Freemasonry is an ancient society or brotherhood of secrets that's been around. It goes so far back, in fact, that many believe the Freemasons are actually a continuation of the medieval Knights Templar, which is a powerful Catholic military order founded in 1119. The Templars became so wealthy and influential during the Middle Ages that they began rivaling even the Catholic Church itself. But in 1307, Pope Clement V moved against them after learning they were allegedly not worshiping God at all, but instead honoring a deity known as the Baphomet, often associated with Lucifer. Reports claim that to be initiated, members had to deny Christ 3 times and spit on the cross, and that they engaged in dark rituals and sacrifices. On Friday, October 13th, so Friday the 13th, 1307, the order was destroyed, but not before some of the most prominent members escaped. These survivors abandoned the Templar name and, according to many, eventually re-emerged as the Freemasons. And to be honest, I mean, the connections are kind of hard to ignore today. The Masons, they use the same titles like Grand Master, and they designed their lodges after Solomon's Temple, where the Templars once met. Freemasonry also has a youth program for boys called the International Order of de Molay, which is named after the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay. There's even a Masonic branch called the Knights Templar. Of course, if you ask a Mason today whether their order has roots in the Templars, I mean, they'll deny it. I mean, that makes sense because the Templar name is tied to the worship of the Baphomet, which is exactly why the Catholic Church wiped them out. So in short, Freemasons appear to be the modern continuation of the Knights Templar, carrying forward not only the name and symbolism, but also the same spiritual allegiance to the Baphomet. They believe that ordinary men can go from immoral to godlike status through following the teachings and the craft in Freemasonry. The Freemasons worship Lucifer, or at least what Lucifer represents, which is liberation and ultimate freedom outside of God, dating back to how the serpent misled humankind with temptation to try the forbidden fruit. Freemasons believe this is the ultimate path in life, to be free from the restrictions of God, who to them is not the ultimate God, but a barrier, or it's something that's in the way of true freedom. It is rooted in ancient witchcraft, occult magic, and alchemy. But if you were to ask a Mason about their rituals, who they worship, etc., similar to how if you were to ask a fraternity or sorority member about certain rituals that they had to go through, like we talked about in my video about fraternities, they will either tell you nothing or they'll tell you that the God of the Bible is their God. But this is either for two reasons: because they truly believe that as a low-level Mason, or they know the truth and choose to lie about it so that history doesn't repeat itself as it pertains to the Knights Templar being disowned. It is also important to know how all presidents except for one are related to one another, and that one president whom is not related to the rest, as it may come as a surprise to many of you, is not President Trump, but instead is President Martin Van Buren, who was the 8th president. Which, fun fact about President Van Buren is that he was also the first U.S. president born as a citizen of the United States, as all previous presidents have been born before the Revolutionary War as British subjects. Most presidents have a bloodline that goes back to King John Lackland. So yes, according to multiple independent genealogy researchers, Donald Trump has distant ancestral ties to British royalty through his mother's side, Mary Ann MacLeod, who was Scottish. But speaking of Scottish, Albert Pike was a highly influential figure and leader in Freemasonry, serving as the sovereign grand commander of the Supreme Council of Scottish Rite Masonry. But not only that, he actually revealed the inner truths of the craft. Pike detailed these insights extensively in his book called Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Albert Pike was, among other things, a lawyer, a poet, and the Confederate States Army general based out of my home state, Arkansas. There's a reason he was given a statue in 1901 in Washington, D.C. It's because he was and still is highly revered by many people, especially Freemasons unto this day. But the truth is that many Freemasons simultaneously go out of their way to discredit and disassociate themselves from him as much as possible, because he revealed the truth about who the one true God is of Freemasonry. In his book, Pike admits how Freemasons in the lower levels are intentionally misled and lied to about what Freemasonry is about, what the symbols mean, and more. From the Bible of Freemasonry, Morals and Dogma, it reads, "The blue degrees are but the outer core or portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he understands them, but it is intended that he shall imagine he understands them. Their true explanation is reserved for adepts, the princes of Masonry." Then it goes on to reveal the principal philosophy of Freemasonry. Masonry is a search after the light. And that search, as you see, leads us directly back to the Kabbalah. But what is the light? Or who is the light? Well, in the book, it states that God is the light, or at least that's what low-level Freemasons are taught. But it's not until the Masons reach the highest level of the craft before they get to learn who that God really is. On page 321 of Morals and Dogma, it says, "Lucifer the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give the spirit of darkness. Lucifer the son of the morning. Is it he who bears the light? And with its splendors, intolerable blinds, feeble, sensual, or selfish souls. Doubt it not." Because they believe that the God of the Bible is actually the bad guy, and Lucifer is actually the good God that never fell from grace, the way that the Bible says. And according to Pike, they as in the Freemasons, deceive the world by convincing them that they believe in God without clarifying who that God actually is. And this actually makes sense because it explains why so many celebrities, when at these award shows and doing these interviews, always say, "I thank God," or I give grace to God, I give thanks to God. But they never really reveal who that God is. They never actually say Jesus Christ. They intentionally keep it vague to mislead the masses. Freemasonry is the study of Lucifer, and it is the opposite of following Jesus Christ. Albert Pike went on to say here, and I quote, "That which we must say to the crowd is we worship a God, but it is the God one adores without superstition. To you, sovereign, grand inspector general, we say this, and you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees. The Masonic religion should be by all of us initiates of the high degrees maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. If Lucifer were not God, would Adonai, the God of the Christians, whose deeds prove cruelty, perfidy, and hatred of man, barbarism, and the repulsion for science, would Adonai and his priests communate him? Yes, Lucifer is God, and unfortunately Adonai is also God, for the eternal law is that there is no light without shade, no beauty without ugliness, no white without black, for the absolute can only exist as two gods, darkness being necessary for light to serve as its foil, as the pedestal is necessary to the statue, and the brake to the locomotive. Thus, the doctrine of Satanism is hearsay, and the true and pure philosophical religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai. But Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil. But that's not true, and we all know that that's not true, because God is good. God is the standard of good. Everything that God made is good, right? So stating that both Lucifer and God of the Bible are both God because you can't have one without the other doesn't change the status of who God is and what God is, which is truth and goodness. And he goes on to state, and I quote, "We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist, and we shall provoke a great social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to all nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origins of savagery, and of most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the people will be forced to defend themselves against the world minority of the world revolutionaries, and will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose spirit will be from that moment without direction and leadership, and anxious for an leadership and anxious for an ideal, but without knowledge where to send its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into public view. A manifestation will result from a general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time." And something else we discussed on this channel just a few days ago, actually, which if you haven't seen my Trump the Dark Magician video, you should really go and check that video out, because it'll help this video make more sense. But something we talked about in one of my past videos here in the last week or two was the Albert Pike 3 World War letter. That is very relevant for today, because I think it would make sense as to some of the things that are taking place today, especially under the presidency of Donald Trump. In this letter, which is Albert Pike's letter to Mazzini, it states the First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the powers of the Tsars in Russia, and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religions. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed, and so that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel and Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate the destroyers of civilization and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view, which means these 3 world wars are by design. That is what this letter is stating. For those of you who don't fully understand, this letter is implicating that all world wars are by design. It has absolutely nothing to do with what the mainstream media tells us, right? And that it's all headed towards a new world war, or the new world order, right? Which is the belief to follow Lucifer. Now listen, whether you choose to believe this or not, I have a question for you. Why would Donald Trump, it does not matter if you agree with some of his Confederism as a Republican. It doesn't matter if you agree with some of his politics from that time, and you can make some great points of some good things that he did back during his time. The ultimate question here is there a line in the sand that you draw as a person who claims to believe in God, in Donald Trump? He doesn't say what God, but he claims to believe in God. But Donald Trump has actually said the word Jesus Christ before as well, right? He claims that people should follow Jesus Christ. I've heard Donald Trump say that before. Is there a such thing as a deal breaker? Because what I mean is, if there are things about, General Albert Pike that you agree with, Donald Trump, but to find these things out about him, not only being a Freemason, not being one of the most revered leaders in Freemason history, but the things that he stated about Lucifer being the one true God, the things that he states about humankind and the direction that we're headed. Why would you try to have that statue reinstalled at a time like this? Why? What message are you sending to the world, to this country, to your constituents, right? Because the excuse of saying you didn't know is just completely out of there, bro. If everyday Joe Schmoes like me and so many other people know that this is what this man believed and this is who he was, what's your excuse? What's your reason? And for those of you who claim to be followers of Jesus Christ or claim to be Trump supporters, wherever you may fall, because I know a lot of y'all follow this channel, I want to hear your justification for this, because I believe this is Trump sending a message. I do. And I actually have Freemasons that watch the show. I've had a few of you hop in the comment section. I've had even some of you even email me and agree to come onto the show, but I guess you backed out. Brother, you're still free. Any other Freemason that watch this, you're free to come into the show, but I'm just going to give you a heads up. You got a tall hill to climb. You got a steep hill to climb here, because when you come into the show, it's not you against me. It's not you against the people. It's you against truth. And truth will always prevail, right? Because this is the truth, man. This is what Freemasonry is ultimately about. Just like I talk about with fraternities and sororities, you wouldn't have to join these fraternities and sororities and have these vows to secrecy. Jesus Christ was not about secrecy. So the fact that you're joining these organizations, going through these rituals, you can't talk about certain things, you're praying to an altar, you're praying to these Greek gods, it doesn't make sense. So y'all in the comment section, give me your thoughts, let me know what you think, man. I'm Demetrius, I go by Didi. Until next time, peace. Oh yeah, Didi got a podcast.